YouTube. What's up? It's James Jones, and I'm the owner of Elevated Law, a Boston-based law firm that focuses on the needs of early-stage startups. And today I'm coming to you with a video about board of directors. I wrote a blog article that's posted to my website. You can find the link below in the description for this video. But I wanted to give a video discussion about what a board of directors is, what a board of directors does, and some key tips and ideas that you should probably keep in mind if you are new at this. So a lot of startups will they'll form their company and they know about certain corporate things, but they're not exactly sure what they should be doing or not doing, and what roles they're supposed to fulfill. Board of directors is usually at the top of this list. And so I wanted to talk about that today. Now, the thing that you need to understand, I guess most importantly, and I mentioned this in the blog article, is that if you've ever seen any 80s movie or maybe early 90s movie, whatever you saw the board of directors doing in that movie is most likely nothing that you will ever encounter in your lifetime unless your company gets ridiculously huge and is publicly traded and like that whole thing. So if that's what you're basing your understanding on, you may as well throw that out the window because that's not what we're dealing with. So let me just put it in some basic terms for you. A board of directors is the group of people who are in charge of ensuring that the direction of the company is consistently going in the way that it should be going. Now, this is different from the president or the CEO, the COO, and all those other C-suite level titles, because they control the day-to-day operation of the company. So any daily decision that needs to be made in fulfillment of the direction the company is supposed to be taking is done by those people. The board of directors has a bigger overarching view and responsibility when it comes to the company because they are in charge of deciding, is the company going to focus on this thing or that thing? Will they be taking this type of investment or that type of investment? Will they be taking any investment at all? Or are they going to try to weather whatever storm they're going through and try to increase product sales in order to get more revenue to grow? Or all these types of things. Major decisions that really affect the entire direction and focus of the company. So that's what the board of directors is in charge of and responsible for. Now, when we're talking about a startup, 99.9% of the time, during that first 1 to maybe even 3 or 4 years of the company, the board of directors is typically just the founders. Especially if you have more than one founder of a company. So when you're talking about the board of directors, what you're really talking about are you and your co-founders who are all running the company anyway, doing work for the company daily anyway. And what's happening is you're actually putting on many different hats over the course of running this company. And so it's important to understand that when you're wearing that director hat, that you understand what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And it's not making a decision about, oh, should we sign a contract with this company or should we ask for this term instead of that term? That's the day-to-day decisions to be made by whoever's in charge of that area of the company. When you're wearing your board member hat, you're making big decisions like, is it time to pursue a Series A round right now? Do we want to try to do another seed round? Do we want to try to bootstrap? Do we want to take a loan instead and not do any investment at all? Do we want to hire a new CEO? Do we want to create a CFO position and bring someone in? Do we want to authorize the issuance of stock to this group of contractors who we plan on bringing on? Those are the types of things that directors and startups, especially in the early years, will typically be making. Now, there are other things to keep in mind with the board of directors that goes beyond simply decision making, and that is who's on the board of directors. Now, this is a decision that should be made by the founders, and typically all of the co-founders will hold a board seat unless for some reason they don't want to, or maybe there's some type of restriction because of their situation or past experiences where they aren't able to hold that responsibility. But who knows? But typically, your founders are your board members. Now, you also may encounter situations where an investor wants a board seat as part of their decision and agreement to invest money in your company. And this is a fairly normal thing. So if someone asks you that, don't think that they're asking for the moon. It's, of course, a decision that you have to make as a board to determine if that's something that you want to do. But it's not out of the ordinary to see an investor or two or three have someone that they nominate to sit on the board and vote as part of the board decision making process. Every once in a while, you might have an advisor who wants a board seat. Perhaps if they are really, really well known and important in the field that they're a part of and that your company is a part of. And sometimes if they're getting equity and they're super important in their field and their advice really goes a long way with your company, they actually may want to have a board seat, not only to make sure that things are going well for the company and they can realize the investment that they're putting into it through their advice, but also just to have a hand in the direction of the company as part of their advisor role. So it's not too uncommon to see advisors on a board of directors as well. So we know what a board does in general. We know who's usually on the board. But now, what about meetings and all that other stuff? And again, this is where you have to throw out everything you saw in those 1980s movies that were super ultra dramatic or comedic or whatever the case is. And you have the board meeting where there's 20 people sitting around some gigantic 100-year-old wooden table in some huge conference room in some high-rise office building, and someone usually busts through the door and storms in with some information and stops the whole meeting. None of that happens. If you're a startup and you're holding a board meeting, generally, and especially if your co-founders are the only other board members, you're usually communicating with each other most of the time anyway throughout the day, just as part of running the company. And so you very rarely will have scheduled board meetings. It's not an uncommon thing for a startup to not really have scheduled board meetings, like monthly meetings or biannual meetings or anything like that. And what happens more often than not is you will end up having resolutions that are adopted by the board in lieu of holding a meeting. So you'll have something in the bylaws that will say that decisions by the board can be made with unanimous vote of all the members without holding a meeting. And usually your lawyer will draw up something that will authorize an investment or issuance of stock or creation of a new board seat or whatever it is that the board needs to do or what decision it needs to make. And then all the board members will just sign it. It'll become part of the corporate record, and that's it. No meeting. Now, if you have investors, you may end up having actual scheduled meetings, maybe once a month, once every few months or so, because even though you'll be in not constant, but fairly regular communication with your investors, they may also want to have actual board meetings that they can sit in on, whether in person or virtually via video conference, or even just on a cell phone, on a speakerphone or something, so that they can participate in the decision making of the company. Because, as I said in the beginning, the board is in charge of looking after the direction of the company and pointing the company into whatever direction they think it needs to go for the future in order to be successful. And so very often you'll have investors who will actually want to have board meetings, real, actual, we are all going to meet on July 13th at 7 p.m. for an hour to discuss this list of things. So that's what the board does. That is typically who's on the board, and that's typically how they make decisions and or meet. And these are the main things that most people need to know about a board of directors. Now, of course, there are plenty of other things that you need to know, and I get into some of those things in the blog post. I'll mention one last thing before I go, and that's talking about the fiduciary duty, which is a requirement if you're a Delaware startup, which if you're a startup, why are you not a Delaware startup? That's a topic for another day. But board members have a fiduciary duty to the company to act in the best interest of the company at all times for whatever decisions they make. They can't be selfish decisions. They can't be things that will benefit them personally, financially, or career-wise or otherwise. So that's the one last thing that I need to tell you about a board of directors. And again, check out the blog post where I go into a little bit more detail about some of these things. And also there will be a link to my website if you want to read more blog posts, watch more videos, or learn more about what Elevate Law might be able to do for your startup. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.